Saturn is retrograde, and it's just moved backwards into the 22nd degree of Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius is happy there. It's co-ruler of Aquarius, and so there's no disparity between the energies of Saturn and the energies of Aquarius. So you have eccentricity in Aquarius, you have innovation, discovery. Aquarius wants the world to be a better place and everyone in it. And Saturn takes a very mature, sober approach to this question. So Saturn in Aquarius is a quiet, steady movement into the future, which is realistic. This is not harum-scarum, wild ideas of colonizing Mars and so on. It's a steady process. If we're about to colonize Mars, what do we need to do? Is it feasible? Do we have the money? Do we have the need? Really looking at things. And if it's to do with ideas, if you think astrology might be helpful for you, okay, so what is astrology? How might it be helpful? What do I have to believe in to use astrology? Why do scientists disparage it? You know, Saturn would look at these questions in a mature, sober way, and actually therefore come to a realistic, usable approach to whatever modern topic or eccentric idea is under consideration. Saturn's retrograding for a period of about 5 months, June, July, August, September, October. And so whatever we have already considered as Saturn went through those various degrees of Aquarius, now we're having to reconsider them, very slowly going backwards over each of our lessons or challenges or teachings. And the Sabian life journey is very helpful for this process of going backwards to read what you should have understood before and didn't fully. If we can think, it's not, but if we can think of life as a sequential series of lessons, then a retrogradation process is going to give us a chance to go over our old work. It's like revising for an exam or something. And it's Saturn, so it's like slow and serious and hard-working. It's not casual. Really, really wants to go over what was supposed to have been learned before. So we've got this aspect of Saturn. It's retrograde. It's in Aquarius. Think about that first before we get to the Sabian degree. And we can also think about the cycle of Saturn. Most particularly, I think, the square, which is approaching proximity between Saturn and Uranus. Now, this was a feature of 2021, a big feature. It happened 3 times, and it doesn't quite make the square again exact when it comes close in September, but it's very close then, very, very close indeed. And it's a square now. Uranus is in the 19th degree of Taurus, and then Saturn in the 22nd degree of Aquarius. So there's a square. It's close enough to count. And so we have to think about the Saturn-Uranus cycle. So way back in 1988, Saturn and Uranus were in conjunction, and they will be in conjunction again in 2032. And within that cycle, we have a square, the closing square, right now. So that which began in 88 and will complete in 32 is actually going through an important phase now, finishing off that which took place in 2021. And this phase is easily studied when we consider the process of a cycle. A conjunction is the seeding of something. The first square is the first challenge to survival. If that idea just isn't any good, then the first square will kill it off. And the opposition will give a sense of flowering of the idea. And the third square, which is where we are now with this Saturn-Uranus position, this is the final test, the fruiting, if you like, of the idea. So what we're going through right now is an echo of what happened last year, where Saturn-Uranus things are in square. They're in tension together, that were representative of that which was going on in '88. Well, that was the fall of the Soviet Union. It's a really, really big deal. The Cold War has defined my whole life. And in '88-ish, soon after, it came to an end. And the American-Soviet kind of polarity, which had held the world together, finished. And now we're finding a re-echo of that same contest. It was always about Russia not feeling safe on the one hand, and America wanting to own the world on the other hand. And it's still about that now, but it's just happening in a local way in Ukraine. But it's not a Cold War, it's a very hot war indeed. And there is a danger going on. So that is the square. We're going to see some resolution of that imminently, over the next few weeks. That issue will be, we will give a lot of attention to that issue. And the two forces that are in contradistinction here is the Uranus force of freedom and the Saturn force of control. So you could imagine that some people feel they want more freedom than they're getting from their government. And the government is afraid of that and wants to control that. And this happens probably on both sides of the dividing line. So that's the background issue in which context we have to understand Saturn in the 22nd degree of Aquarius. So a rug placed on the floor for children to play. Despite rumours to the contrary, people are unnecessarily, yet reliably kind. The general kindness of humanity is what we're talking about. There is great kindness in the world, and those of us strong in faith will look for it and expect to find it, yet never forget to appreciate it fully and reciprocally. Some see the opposite and so find the opposite. During times of trouble, we rarely know exactly how or when we will be supported, but trusting that it will all turn out right in the end is very sound as a life strategy. So the teaching here is to practice kindness as a spiritual path. And the idea of placing a rug on the floor for kids to play, the floor is hard and a rug is soft. And the general principle is we like to soften things for kids because they're children. In other words, they're innocent and somewhat powerless. So they can't do it for themselves, and actually they don't threaten us. That's the idea behind this. However, a spiritual person would take that to the next level and put a rug on the floor for adults as well. In other words, to practice parental kindness, generally speaking, generally to everyone, as a spiritual practice, as a spiritual path. And many of us are kind. Most of us really are kind to some extent. And many of us are kind generally. And you will find that if you're a kind person, then you can validate what I've just said, because the people in your life will also be kind. What goes around comes around. So if you're noticing that your life is not peopled by kind people, and there is not kindness in your world, it may be that you have not yet found the faith to practice kindness as a way of life. And this is the teaching here, that perhaps we should. Perhaps that's the wisest strategy of all. As Saturn is the planet that we're studying this with, if this was Venus or the moon, it would be gentler, wouldn't it? But it's Saturn. It's quite a tense situation because it's square Uranus, and it's dealing with the fundamental conflict between freedom and security, freedom and control. Control and security are thought to be hand in hand. And I think here we have a different teaching. What we're saying here is, let's look at that question. The idea that you can control things itself is false. You can't. Nothing is subject to control. Eventually everything must change. The forces of change outweigh everything else. Now let's come to the idea of the expression in which Saturn is expressing itself. This is the 5th expression of Aquarius, the degrees from 21 through to 25. And the last sort of 3 expressions of Aquarius begins with assurance, and then poise, which is this one, and then alchemy. So let's put it in the context that the sense of Aquarius developing this assurance, this real self-confidence, is something we notice when we see a truly advanced and developed Aquarius type person. They know what they're about. They're very self-assured indeed. And then here we have poise. The expression that we're studying today is poise. And this is where kindness is expressed, because we feel a sense, first of all, of stoicism. Like, if it goes wrong, oh well, so what? Then we find kindness in this particular degree. And then there's the bears waving its paws around, where we're developing emotional self-control. And as we teach this to other people, so we deepen the learning ourselves. And we come to this sort of understanding. We have the ability to transmute emotionality into spiritual wisdom. That's the general principle of this particular expression of Aquarius, poise. And so here we have Saturn. Saturn stays in this degree until the 27th of August. So we're practicing kindness as a spiritual practice. In other words, deliberately. This is Saturn. This is deliberately. Because we believe that this is the best way to resolve the conflict that arises when control and freedom clash, as indeed is happening now, all manner of places, including the war in Ukraine. So we believe that by practicing kindness here and now in our daily lives, we can generally spread goodness and peacefulness around the world.